Good morning, students. Myself, Dr. Vijender Singh Tamar, Associate Professor in English. Presently, I am posted at Government College, Buda, in Jajnu district. Today, we will take up BA Part 3rd, English Literature, Paper First, a famous poem, Preludes, Explanation. I have given you the question, but as some of the students have asked that they are not able to understand it easily, so I have decided to give it line by line explanation. Before I begin, let me tell you about the author or the poet. Poet is T.S. Eliot. T.S. Eliot is a short form for Thomas Stearns Eliot. He was born in 1888 and died in 1965. He was born in USA, then he lived in Germany, France, and other European countries, and later on he settled in London. And he continued composing his writings, compositions. He was a versatile genius who during his long span of productive activity achieved distinction as a poet, playwright, journalist, and critic. The idea is he was not limited to one field, but he was a versatile personality. He was awarded Nobel Prize for Literature in 1948. The peculiar thing about this poet is it is said that he is the head of the modernism. With him, modernism in literature began. He uses various literary techniques and diction to represent a world which has lost hope and become content with greed and despair. This ideology came into his mind because of many incidents which happened during his life tenure. First World War, Second World War happened, and he saw that how humanity has been crushed. There is no love between man and man. Because of that, he also suffered. And to show all this in his poems, he uses symbolism. He paid a lot of attention to symbolism. He wrote of depressing societies and hopeless lives. This can be understood because he was not regarded as a happy man. He suffered a mental breakdown and was admitted to an asylum. He really wrote about the issues facing societies and the dreadfulness of it all. The tone of most of his poems is much like the tone of this one. Means he uses symbols and presents how the society has decayed. There does not exist love among human beings. Human beings are worse than animals. He tries to depict in his poems. Now let us come to about the poem. The poem, as the title indicates, let me tell you, it is not a one poem, but it is a combination of 4 poems. What is the meaning of prelude? Prelude means a preview or beginning of something. And each of the 4 parts is the beginning or prelude to something. In this case, they all represent the decay of society. Broadly speaking, preludes is about drudgery, menial work, hard work, waste, isolation of modern urban life. The unnamed city in which the poem is set is a grimy, dingy place in which people unthinkingly partake in monotonous daily routines. The idea is the poet has not given the name of the city, but it is applicable to all the modern cities. As I have told you, these four preludes themselves are called complete poems. They are four in number. The first two preludes were composed in October 1910 at Harvard. The third prelude was written in Paris in July 1911. The fourth prelude was composed at Harvard probably sometimes after November 1911 or possibly in 1912. They were published together in Wyndham Lewis journal Blast in July 1915. If we notice each of the preludes, we find there is a unity of mood and imagery in the sequence, although the poems were written over a period of about a year. The unity is suggested also by the title. Preludes are short musical composition on one theme. Eliot's poems, however, are an antithesis to the preludes of Chopin, because they are not going to present a happy scene, as Chopin used to do. They are vignettes of modern urban experience in all its unromantic squalor, monotony, and horror. The idea is all the poem give the same thing for which Eliot is famous. That is, he uses symbolism to show the decay of humanity on this earth. Now let us come to the first prelude, the first four lines. These lines form the first of the four preludes and give the picture of winter evening in a house in the back street of the metropolis. It may be any city. It is a winter evening and the day is coming to a close. It is 6 o'clock. The speaker describes it as though it is a person. He personifies it, allowing the reader to better understand the place. Means the place has been personified. Evening has been presented as something human being. Human attributes have been given to it. The next feature he wants the reader to know about the city is that it smells like steak, that is beef, pieces of beef. This smell is in the passageways wafting, that is moving in the air, from restaurant and homes. The scene is less calm than it originally seemed in the first lines, as the speaker depicts the day as burnt out. Burnt out is a symbol, as I have told you. He uses symbols. Burnt out means the day is exhausted, finally comes to an end, finally settles down. If we find something unique in these lines, we find the imagery is drawn from Eliot's direct experience of the grim realities of city life. And the second, the gloomy cityscape of these lines recalls some of the urban poetry that had existed in England since the middle of the 19th century. Dear students, as you know, when we answer the question of reference to context, we are supposed to write critical comments. These two critical comments will be applicable to all the lines of this poem. More or less, you can say you can use them everywhere. Now let us come to the next lines, 5 to 8. Outside the house, a gusty shower wraps. A gusty shower is driving dirty leaves and small pieces of newspaper from open places to wrap the feet of the street walkers. The idea is that the still quiet scene suddenly becomes lively with rain. There also blows breeze. The shower, along with wind, stirs up the leaves and pieces of newspaper lying here and there in the vacant plots between buildings of the city. There is a rainstorm happening as well. It moves the grimy scraps left behind the long day about your feet. And At this point, it becomes clear that Eliot is going to utilize second person. Remember, the poet is using all the persons in this poem. He will use you. We can imagine that is the listener. And the speaker itself is the poet, and he will also use first person, the poet himself. This makes perfect sense for this piece as it forces the reader into the narrative alongside the speaker. In the next line, there is the first reference to newspapers. They are moving from their previous resting places in vacant lots, which under the pressure of air, wind, they are blowing here and there. Because as far as critical comments is concerned, we can say these lines depict the vignettes of modern urban experience in all its unromantic squalor and monotony, horror, whatever we make it say. Now the line number 9 to 12, the sour sweets, the rainstorm on the broken screens of the window, chimney pots. The rain is falling and it is striking against broken chimney screens and chimney pots. And at the corner of the street, a lonely cab horse steams and stems. And far away from there, one can see that there is standing a cab horse, which draws a cab. And because of the environment, it is stamping the wet ground with its foot and also gives out loud noise when air comes out through its nose. We can say that the speaker is presenting a realistic picture of the modern metro city. The line number 13 itself is different or separated from all the 12 lines of the first prelude. This line is set apart from the rest of the stanza, so it must be important. The poet describing the lightening of the lamps. This is a reference to the onset of night and how everyone lights the lamps inside their homes. The line emphasizes the fact that the people in the city have long since escaped from its streets. They are now safely inside their houses. Evening is turning into night here, causing everyone to light their lamps, because at that time they did not have switch to light the lamps. They used to put oil to light the lamps. So this beautiful last line ends in the scene with a quiet excitement and a hint of hope. The poem was written at a time when the street lamps were lit every evening with oil lamps. Now let us come to the part 2 or stanza 2 or prelude 2. The morning. In this we are given the morning scene. In the first we were given evening scene, now morning scene. Morning comes to consciousness, means in awareness. Here again the same thing, personification, but with the morning, the characteristics, things which generally happens in metro city at the time of morning are presented in these lines. The poet says that during morning, the advent of the day is greeted with the smells of beer from the streets covered with sawdust and trampled by the dirty feet of the crowd who go hurriedly to take their cups of coffee at coffee stands. Here the speaker skips the rest of the night, all the activities of the rest of the night. He will describe in the fourth prelude. And morning has dawned once more. This is another example of Eliot's use of personification. The city come back to consciousness just like a human being waking up. The first smell the speaker takes note of this time is that of stale beer. This is a leftover from whatever happened at night. There are also footprints in the mud. These lead up to early coffee stands. Early coffee stand where people go for coffee early in the morning. The importance of this line connects to the next, in which the speaker emphasizes the unchanging pattern of life. The inhabitants of the city need to coffee, or that is, they require coffee to resume their masquerades. It is false or pretenses with time. This with other activities, they resume the masquerades. That time resumes, one thinks of all the hands that are raising dingy shades in 1,000 furnished rooms. It means the morning is not necessarily a fresh start to life. These people are grudgingly entering back into the same pattern of tasks. The relevance of the reference to masquerade balls comes from the fact that time never seems to progress. There are no changes to landscape of movement. The numerous activities peculiar to morning time, so that the stage is being set for the shows of the ensuing busy day. Among these activities, one may easily visualize all the hands raising up the squalid window shades in 1,000 furnished rooms. The critical comments that the lines may appear to be imagistic representations of urban life, recorded without comment, but the objectivity and detachment are illusory. It is difficult to separate the objects of perception from the perceiving consciousness. It is the observer who thinks of the weary monotony and the sameness of all the hands raising dingy shades, and perceives human beings as dismembered parts of the body, the muddy feet, hands. This fragmentation is a negation of individual identity. What the poet wants to say is this, that in the modern era, people have become just number. They do not have any individual identity. They are just number, 2%, 3%, like that, not more than that. Now, if we come to the stanza number 3rd, this stanza is again a separate poem. Here, the you, as we came to know in the stanza number 1st, you means listener. So here the speaker returns to the listener, the person or people he referred to as you in the first stanza. He uses this person to depict a general course of action taken by an average resident of the city. It begins with a return to night. These lines focus upon the figure of an unclean woman in a room, means that you may be a woman who has thrown violently the blanket from her bed and lies still on her back in a dull or stupefied state. She is lying there and staring at the ceiling, waiting and dozing and meditating on all the sordid or distasteful images of the night. The idea is that her soul is as sordid as her physical environment. Her filthy experiences of the night flashed for a moment like the lantern slides on the ceiling. If we notice the important things, we can make the following comments. First, the woman's soul is depicted as being sordid like everything else mentioned in the poem. There is nothing in her soul to distinguish her from the environment. Second, the notion of the soul constituted of 1,000 sordid images is a denial of any spiritual dimension to the self. Means the people of the modern city have lost all kinds of spiritual hope. They are just becoming tools in the machine. They do not have anything special for them. Now in these other lines, as we have noticed, there is abrupt change of tone, and all the world come back and the light crept up between the shutters, and you heard the sparrows In the gutters, you had such a vision of the street as the street hardly understand. This time, the focus is on lying awake at night, unable to sleep. The light creeps up with the dawn in between the shutters and the sparrows begin to chirp. The listener hears the sparrows moving not in trees but in the gutters of the buildings. The speaker states that the listener imagines the street in a way that the street itself could not understand. It is not entirely clear what Eliot meant in these lines, but perhaps he was thinking about how one's own image of the world makes the world what it is. One's emotion influence how the world seems to at any given time. The poet explained it with an example. What the poet wants to say is that when we are awake throughout the whole night, many unpleasant thoughts come in to our mind and we feel different about the outside world. Meanwhile, other people are ignorant about our thoughts. They do not know what is going on in our mind and are blissfully happy and asleep. The dark soul of the night hovers around us. We see the actual world of pain and despair and indifference. However, every morning we have to get up to accomplish the routine task. Now in the next lines, sitting along the bed says, where you curled the papers from your hair or clasped the yellow soles of feet in the palms of both soiled hands. The poet in these lines says that the listener, who is most probably is a woman, sits up on the edge of her bed, curls the papers from her hair, and grasps the yellow soles of her feet with the palms of both her dirty hands. There is a great deal of dirty and grim left over from the decay before. This emphasizes the fact the new day does not wipe away the old. There is a grimy on the main subject's hands and feet, even though the day is just beginning. Means previous days dirt has not been cleaned. The idea is we have to live with previous sin. The imagery of the paper as well as the dirty yellow feet, hands mirrors the imagery of the dingy street in the first stanza. The stanza ends with this grimy that we can't seem to avoid. It is affected our mind and our body. It makes an indelible impression on our mind and body. Now stanza number 4. His soul stretched tight across the skies that fade behind a city block or trampled by insistent feet at 4 and 5 or 6 o'clock. The last prelude describes the vision of the woman. The street is like the woman stretched on her back and passively enduring the pressures of men mounted on her. This is one of the most important images of the poem, as the street is imagined as a human being. The soul belongs to a man. It is in the sky and it is in the city itself. The street lies like a collapsed body trampled over by insistent feet, and the feet of the office worker returning at 4 and 5 and 6 o'clock. It is evening again, although it is unclear whose soul this is or what kind of soul it is. It is being ignored. It is stretched tight, trying to remain solvent, while also being subjected to the pounding of thousands of feet as men and women race to get to work, home, and to work again. If we make a comments, this is a larger metaphor for the way that what is right and moral is ignored and damaged by the demands of everyday life. This makes it seems as though the soul does not belong to just one person, but is perhaps representative of the world as a whole. What the poet wants to say that it is not the individual, but in the name of individual, it represents the whole world. Now, in the next lines, the poet says, and short square finger, thick finger, stuffing pipes, having pipes in their hands, and evening newspaper, and eyes assured of certain certainties, the conscious of a blackened state, impatient to assume the world. In this line, the poet says that the soul is the state's conscious. Because of its fading like the sky or being trampled underneath people's feet, it is being ignored. It is something that most people generally do not bother with. It is stretched tight, trying to remain solvent, while also being subjected to the pounding of thousands of feet as men and women race to get to work, home, and to work again. These people are clutching tobacco pipes and evening newspaper with short, thick fingers, and their eyes are full certainties in certain matters. In this way, the street, like the woman, faces the day with a blackened conscience and eagerly awaits the day's traffic to begin. In other words, these people do not think beyond eating and drinking. The poet tries to emphasize the lack of imagination among the people in metropolis. In fact, it refers to a sense of sin which is going to take over the world. If we make critical comments, number one, again, we get more unpleasant imagery. These three lines focus in on particular body parts of the people in the city, the fingers stuffing a pipe, and the eyes which seem assured of certain certainties. Blackness implies a sense of sin and conscious of moral discrimination and responsibility. The distinction between subject and object is again blurred. Whose conscience is it? That of the street or of the perceiving self? It means what the poet wants to say is become more and more complex to find out the real answer. Now, after looking all these scenes, now the speaker, that is the poet himself, comes forward and gives his views. He says, I am moved by fancies that are curved around these images and cling. The notion of something infinitely gentle, infinitely suffering thing. In this line, the speaker of the poem gives his personal views about the situation instead of just narrating from so far. Means up till now the poet has been just describing what he saw, but now he gives his views, what he feels. He tells us that he is moved by the fancies built up around these images of the city streets, images that make him feel deep pity for human suffering, for the suffering of the gentle innocent, as one might pity the prostitute or the rest poor of the great city. His involvement in this narrative allows one to take a more hopeful approach to what is being described. When he looks out on the grimy, smelly city streets, he is able to hold on to the notion of some infinitely gentle thing that moves around. This could be a general feeling of grace, goodness, or physical impact of what listening to one's soul could do. If we make comments, the notion of some infinitely gentle, infinitely suffering thing is perhaps a compassionate perception of suffering inherent in the images around which the poet's fancies are curved, and in the souls constituted by these images. It is a reminder also of the suffering of Christ to redeem the sins of humanity. Now the last lines. Wipe your hands across your mouth and laugh. The world's revolve like an ancient woman gathering fuel in a vacant loaves. In the final, these are the final three lines of the poem. The prelude, the speaker returns to second person and asks the reader to wipe their hand across their mouth and laugh. This is a return to the previous image of time going nowhere. He described the world as revolving endlessly and as history repeating itself. What the poet wants to say is that universe is indifferent to all our spring. The stars still shine, things remain same, the world keeps on moving round. There is no escape route from the monotonous everyday life of modern man in the city. You get up, you go to work or school, you come home, you try to sleep, you get up again to do the same. The ancient women come again and again to gather fuel in vacant lots. It means there is no music or hope for the poor living in the day, dry and unromantic environment of the filthy city streets. The speaker wants the reader to look on the world and see it for what it is, but not despair. One needs to embrace their own soul, see hope in the future, and laugh when they can. It is not clear whether or not the speaker sees the world as changing or becoming any less grimy so. This poem, we have completed the explanation, but we have to keep two things in mind, that the poet has used symbols and images, particularly two symbols or images. One is of newspaper and the other is soul. Let us first take, there are a number of images that turn up multiple times within preludes. The poet has used many times the same image. One of the most striking is newspaper. It appears in the first, third and fourth stanza and is used for a variety of different tasks. This newspaper has been used for various symbols. Same newspaper stands for different things. The pieces which are circulated throughout the city and move from hand to hand symbolize the slow degradation of the city as well as its resilience. The newspaper is connected to the soul of the city itself. They are everywhere, touching every life. There are a number of images that